Hey, I'm Creech, and this is Creech and Cars, where I talk about car news, history, and culture. When we think of Swedish cars, usually just one name comes to mind: Volvo. But after thinking a little harder, we all remember Saab. Saab survived for decades, producing quirky and very Swedish near-luxury cars and selling them to a very niche market. But as we got into the 21st century, it became clearer and clearer that car companies like that just can't make it anymore, and even with significant backing from GM, the last Saabs rolled off of the production line over 10 years ago now. But what if I told you it's not over? And no, I'm not talking about the Saab that continued as a defense contractor and is still around today making fighter jets and missiles, but actual Saab cars, although they won't be branded as such. You may have heard of NEVS or NEVS at some point over the last 10 years. It stands for National Electric Vehicle Sweden, and it's actually a company created by Chinese investors that was used to buy the rights to Saab's automotive division after it declared bankruptcy in late 2011. Since Saab was still capable of supporting itself with the defense division of the business, the Saab name and logo weren't included in the sale, and NEV's purchase of the intellectual property and factory were solely related to the automotive division. From there, the new company maintained the same Trollhättan headquarters in Sweden and rehired many former Saab engineers and designers, putting them to work on a couple of EV projects. The first was the 9.3 EV, which just took the most recent Saab 9.3's design and gave it an electric powertrain along with a few other minor updates. The NEVS brand actually had some promising results with the electric 9.3 at first, with lucrative agreements to provide the cars as fleet vehicles in China, but pretty much all of these deals eventually fell through, and after 10 years, NEVS was almost completely out of money and could no longer convince investors to give it another shot, as so many other EV brands had been successfully launched by that point. However, there was one other project NEVS had the former Saab engineers and designers working on, and that is what came to be known as the Emily GT. This was a fully electric sedan that was much more on par with the likes of the Model S, and it was the last hope for keeping a remnant of Saab alive. Unfortunately, in March of 2023, time had all but run out, and NEVS permanently shut down and began to liquidate its assets. Now into December of 2023, Saab fans are once again rejoicing, as it has been announced that Canadian startup Electra EV has purchased the rights to the Emily GT and plans to put the model into production, as after all of the work that has been put into it, the Emily GT is pretty close to being production ready. So let's take a closer look at the Emily GT, starting with the exterior design. First off, it really looks like a successor to the last Saab 9.5, which I think still looks really good all these years later. And the Emily GT is still fairly recognizable as a Saab, especially in the overall shape of the car. The front end is definitely very different, lacking a grille, and there is a large front light bar, but only a thin strip of it lights up. The headlights and running lights are all LEDs and do look nice, but they are a little basic. The blacked out A-pillars give it a half floating roof look, and the roofline is straight until it slopes back to the trunk lid. The side is sleek and smooth with aerodynamic wheels and flush door handles. The rear end has a clean and high-end look, with an LED light bar that mirrors the front end design, and the rear bumper that has a sportier diffuser-like look to it. Moving inside, it becomes clear that the Emily GT was designed and developed after the initial success of the Tesla Model S. The large tablet-style infotainment screen really grabs your attention, and the digital gauge cluster is a nice size as well. I like the steering wheel with its two-tone, two-spoke design, and then there are a couple of cup holders and a gear selector that looks a little old-fashioned by now. As you can see, it's pretty minimalistic, but the door panels and seats are more interesting to look at. They use what appears to be a fabric or cloth-like material, and there isn't really much leather used, but that's kind of similar to what Volvo offers as an alternative to its leather interiors. The back seat is said to be very spacious, and the glass roof helps out with that feeling. The front seats have large holes in them, and if you look closely, you can see what looks like a large screen or tablet that's built into the back of the front seats for the rear passengers to use as entertainment. As far as performance is concerned, there are some pretty impressive claims with the Emily GT. Foremost is range. NEVS designed the vehicle to be capable of over 600 miles of range on a single charge, made possible by its ginormous 175 kilowatt hour lithium-ion battery pack. The Emily GT also uses 4 motors, where each motor is built into the wheel hubs. These motors will combine to produce 484 horsepower, and the battery does make the car very heavy, but it should still be able to accelerate from 0 to 60 in a respectable 4.6 seconds. In addition to this, NEVS had plans for a high-performance version of the Emily that would rival the Model S Plaid or Air Sapphire, and that version is said to produce 653 horsepower and 1,622 pound-feet of torque, which helped to drop the 0 to 60 time down to just 3.2 seconds. So now that you're all caught up with the Emily GT, will this actually make it as a production model, and how soon could you actually see one on the road? Well, I mentioned earlier that the new owner is a Canadian startup, but it was founded by Yihad Mohammed, who has business ventures all over the world. He has said that the Emily and PONS, which was NEVS' autonomous vehicle project, will initially move over to Turkey, while the original Saab factory in Trollhättan is reworked and refurbished essentially, as it's not really functional in its current state. Mohammed said that he greatly values the local community there and has visited the area. He also said he fully plans on moving back into that factory to begin the mass production of the Emily GT, and I guess the final steps of getting the vehicle ready will be taken care of in Turkey. But with the vast majority of the car being production ready at this point, it really wouldn't take that long for Electra to begin producing and delivering the first models. This could be done within a couple of years. But without details on pricing, it's hard to comment on the commercial viability of this model right now. I do think the market will be limited for a while. I think it would have particular trouble breaking into the North American market and maybe even the Chinese market, given the ties seem to have been severed with those investors after NEVS liquidated earlier this year. I think the main focus may be in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, where there is large growth and new car buyers are much more receptive to newer, less established brands. One other route I think Electra could consider is selling the intellectual property to Geely so that the Emily GT could be rebranded and or renamed and then sold as a Volvo or Polestar model. This would be a more viable way to achieve mass production while also allowing the Emily GT to hold on to its Swedish roots and give it more credibility, considering there's no way to use the Saab name anymore. Overall, with where we are now, I think Saab fans really need to hold their breath on this being a triumphant successor to the brand. So there's everything that's been going on with the NEVS Emily GT, the last gasp that remains of Saab in the automotive world. If you like this video, check out the rest of the channel and subscribe so you don't miss future uploads. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.